If you're wishing you could let your God come down, if you feel like you can't hold it all together, come just as you are. There's no need for any hiding. In the Father's house you're met with open arms, and He gives grace without condition. As you are, with nothing else, just come. There is space for everyone who feels unworthy, a place for those who never felt at home, where you don't have to wonder if you're wanted. Come just as you are. There's a hope for you.
Well, hey there, everyone. My name's Tristan. Welcome to Mission Community Church, and thanks for spending part of your weekend with us. Before our service gets started, we'd like to take a few minutes and tell you about some things coming up for you and your family around Mission Community Church. So, check this out. Guys, we are just 3 days away from Mission Men's Axe Throwing Night. This Wednesday, right here at Mission, we will be bringing out professional axe throwers to teach us how to play darts with axes. It's going to be awesome. We will be grilling, hanging out, and throwing axes. Don't miss this chance to connect with other guys here at Mission. Register now at missionaz.org. Wednesday night, starting on October 20th, Mission Women will be going through Christine Cain's study, Unashamed. Christine believes that in order to change the future, we have to realize God is bigger than our mistakes, inadequacies, and limitations. Learn how you can step into your future with confidence, knowing you are dearly loved and created for a divine purpose. Register now at missionaz.org. Join us Friday, October 29th for a Halloween-themed movie night right here in the Worship Center. Bring the whole family and be sure to dress up. Register online to let us know you're coming. Serve Day is coming up. On Saturday, November 6th, we'll be heading out to several partner sites to make a difference in our community and show them the love of Christ through service. If you've been a part of one of these days in the past, you know how rewarding it can be to serve the many families in need throughout our community. Registration is now live, so head over to missionaz.org to register. Mission Young Adults, join us at Fat Cats in Gilbert for a night of bowling and fun on October 21st at 6:30 p.m. Cost is just $15, and that includes 90 minutes of bowling, shoe rental, and a soda. Appetizers will also be provided. Register now to let us know you're coming. You can register at missionaz.org to let us know that you're coming. We would love to see you there. Well, that's all we have for now. Again, we just want to say thank you for choosing to spend your morning with us here at Mission. With that said, let's get ready to worship.
Victory.
The battle belongs to you. And if you are for me, who can be against me? For Jesus, there's nothing impossible for you. When all I see are the ashes, you sit on the When all I see is the cross, God, you see the empty tomb. So when I bow on my knees with my hands lifted high, the battle belongs to you, and every beat I lay at your feet, I'll sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our Almighty fortress. You go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. Almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. You shine in the shadows, you win every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. So when I bow on my knees with my hands lifted high, oh God, the battle belongs to you, and every beat I lay at your feet, oh, I sing through the night. Oh God, the battle belongs to you. Oh God, the battle belongs to you.
Come on, he's with us and he's for us. You are with me. What can separate us? You are for me. What can stand against us? Your love, it won't let go. I know it won't. Darkness, shadows have no power over me. Fear is empty. Shame has no authority. Your love, it won't let go. I know it won't. For I know your thoughts, your plans for me are good. And I know you hold my future in my hope. Your promises are never
Welcome to Mission, everybody. I'm Rachel. It's so good to be here with all of you guys this morning. Whether you're with us in person or you're watching online, we're just so glad you would choose to spend your Sunday here with us. And if it is your first time here with us, welcome. We would love the opportunity to meet you. I want to invite you to the Hub. It's just through these center doors here. We would love to answer any questions that you have. We have a free gift for you as well. Well, as you guys heard in the video earlier, we have a ton of things coming up here at Mission. I am personally very excited that Date Night Phoenix is back. If you've ever been to one before, they are so much fun. So just remember to prioritize that date night. It is on November 19th, so mark your calendars. Tickets are on sale now, so hop online and find out more. Well, guys, this week is your axe throwing event. That sounds dangerous, honestly, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. That's probably why it's fun. So get online and sign up for that. That's this Wednesday. I can't believe I'm saying this, but we are headed into our holiday season, which historically here at Mission means a season of generosity. We kick that off with a Serve Day. That's on November 6th. This is an awesome time to invite your friends, your family, your neighbors, your small group. So sign up together to serve on November 6th. And then last but not least, we are supporting the Department of Child Safety this month. So on your way out today, you're going to receive a card that has a list of items on it that they desperately need. If you'd like to participate in helping in that way, just bring those items back next week. We'll have a tent in the courtyard. Well, if you guys are a regular giver here, I just want to say a genuine, sincere thank you for partnering with us in what God is up to, not only within the walls of this church, but within our entire community. So thank you. And we are going to give you a moment right now to give through our website or online, or on the app.
Well, good morning, Mission. How's everyone doing? Awesome. It's good to be back. Every one of you watching online, we're so grateful that you are tuning in. Last couple of weeks, we had Jared Hurd, who pastor in San Diego, dear friend of Mission. I love the guy. He's an incredible communicator, just high vision, can teach God's word, hilarious. And then last week, we had another buddy of mine, Ian Simpkins from Nashville. Funny as well, but different type of funny. Very dry humor, but I just thought, did a fantastic job. Both of those guys, I'm grateful for the people who are leaning in during this season to just dive into God's word together. But sometimes you have a moment where you're kind of solidifying the schedule, and so you're working through dates, and then you get thrown some dates, and you're like, great, this is awesome. And then they hand you the passage, and you realize, oh, I got the hardest passage in Galatians. Really? We couldn't have given that to Ian or Eugene Cho or Jared Hurd? Next time. Okay, next time. But I loved last week because you had Ian just basically talking about how Paul just opposed Peter. If you remember this, like Peter was eating like some pork in front of the Gentiles, and then certain religious leaders showed up and he cared about his reputation. I love what Andy Stanley says, like if Jesus cared about his reputation, he would have never left heaven. But like Peter cares about his reputation and starts to kind of like manage, and Paul sees it and calls it out. And so if you're like listening and watching this as someone who's a part of the Galatian churches, you're like, ooh, this is good. Like this is like must-watch TV, like popcorn, like emoji. You're just like eating this and like watching this. And then Paul turns his attention straight to the Galatians. And he's like, you foolish Galatians. And everyone's like, no, to get mad at Peter again. Don't be mad at us. And Paul just goes after, who has bewitched you? Before your very eyes, Jesus Christ was clearly portrayed as crucified. Now, this word portrayed, you get like the word portrait, but it's this painting. It's a visual painting that Paul is saying, like, I portrayed the gospel to you, and you all have just missed it. You're missing it. And then he goes, I would like to learn just one thing from you, Galatians. Did you receive the Spirit by works of the law or by believing what you heard? Continues on and says, are you so foolish? After beginning by means of the Spirit, are you now trying to finish by means of the flesh? So what's going on here? Paul is frustrated because there's these teachers, these pastors, that have kind of come into the Galatian churches and they've begun to speak a message. Now, Paul, when he taught simply that salvation came because you had faith plus salvation equals obedience. But these teachers were coming in saying faith plus obedience equals salvation. And it feels very small, but it's a massive difference. And to be honest, many churches in the 50s and the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, they were based on this. And here was the kind of terminology. If you believe what we believe and you behave as we behave, then you can belong to our community. And there was this whole movement. You believe, you behave, and if we've seen you behave well enough, we will call you member. And that's how a lot of churches did it. And that would have upset Paul because he's seeing this take place throughout these churches in the region of Galatia. And Paul's like, no, you don't understand. This is about you believing. But you believe that you belong because of what Christ did. And when you believe and you belong, it's going to do something because the Spirit's going to be at work in you that's going to change the way that you live your life. And it's going to change the way that you walk and behave. More than anything, it's actually going to change that you're going to be walking in blessing. And so I want to do my very, very best to try and unpack this because I think for many of us, and I know for myself for many, many years, I didn't understand the gospel. I understood Jesus died on a cross. I didn't understand how it played out in my everyday life. And I watched how certain ways in which works began to creep in. And I just began to make this gospel story more about me and not enough about Christ. And I'm watching this happen in the church. I'm watching the way that people talk about kind of their faith. I'm watching how people engage with the gospel. I'm watching how people are just like almost some people even stepping away from the gospel. And somehow they don't actually believe and understand why it's such good news. And so Paul does something in Galatians chapter 3, and it's really, it's hard to read. I'm gonna be honest. On Monday when our teaching team here at Mission got together, I literally read through all of Galatians 3 and I was like, what do you want me to do with this? Because it's intense. You'll get lost in the verbiage, the wording. Most commentators and scholars step back from this passage, even though it's the clearest, outside of probably 2 Corinthians 5, the clearest understanding of the gospel, but it's just chunky. It's like wonky when you read it. I was talking to one person on staff here, Nick Solis, and Nick was like, I think if Paul even preached this message today, he'd confuse himself. So I was like, maybe that might be a stretch. But I think it's really, really hard. So here's what I'm asking. I'm asking if you will go with me back if you grew up in the 70s or 80s or 90s and you had an old fellowship hall at your church, and every once in a while someone would come and do a Bible study. I'm gonna try my best to take us back to the fellowship hall and do a Bible study on this passage. And I want you to understand it. You'll have to stay with me. I promise you it will go somewhere, and I'm gonna try my very best not to bore you or lose you. But here's what I need you to understand. John Stott, this amazing writer, he's a UK guy, wrote this book called The Cross of Christ. It's an amazing book if you ever want to read something on the cross. But he writes, in this book, The Cross of Christ, he writes about Galatians 3. And I actually think he does great service to unpacking this. And he uses 3 words. When he's talking about Galatians 3, he talks about how the necessity of the cross. He talks about the meaning, and then he talks about the consequences. So I just kind of played off those 3 words from John Stott, and this is kind of my outline for today. If you like outlines, we're gonna talk about the necessity of the cross from Galatians 3, the meaning of the law and promise from Galatians 3, and the consequences of not understanding the gospel, all with a massive ladder behind my head. Now, here we go. Let's start with the necessity of the cross. To understand the necessity of the cross, what we're about to read, you have to understand blessing versus curse. Now, you've probably seen this in the Old Testament. And the Old Testament was known as the Hebrew Scriptures. The Hebrew Scriptures in Jewish or Hebrew is known as the Tanakh. It's basically 3 books that were kind of put together. Our Old Testament has 39 books. The Tanakh has 24. Still has all the other books. We just have 1st and 2nd Chronicles, 1st and 2nd Kings. They just have Chronicles. They just have Kings. But the first 5 books were known as the Torah. And the Torah was synonymous with the way, the truth, and the light. And if you actually lived this, you could walk in step of harmony and in tune with the divine, with Yahweh. And these first 5 books were everything. Jewish boys and girls memorized it. They studied it. They knew commentary. They knew it. It was everything to them. And within the Torah, there were 613 mitzvot, commandments, laws, and they ranked them. Like college football teams, they ranked them. Different rabbis had different understandings of what and how to rank, but the job was this, that they would live their life living these 613 commands out. Because it was their way to walk in step and in tune and in harmony with God. Now, whenever you see, and you see this in Deuteronomy, you see this in Genesis, you see this all over, this phrase, blessing and curse, it was covenant language. It was covenant language. And the idea in the Old Testament, the Hebrew Scriptures, was how to walk in covenant with God. Because God was looking for a people. And he wanted a people who would literally embody his way of life. And so covenant was when you actually stepped into it, you trusted it, you would receive the favor and the blessing to live this. But if you literally said, I don't want this, I don't want this, the curse was understood as being cut out of relationship. The curse wasn't like some like Harry Potter kind of like hocus pocus stuff. It was literally like, I want nothing to do with this. I want to cut myself out of this covenant. And when you did that, there were curses that came. So here's where you're gonna see these 5 verses that are really, really impactful from Galatians chapter 3. It says this: for all who rely on the works of the law, first 5 books of the Bible, 613 commands, are under a curse as it is written. So Paul's like saying, hey, I know you've studied. I know you've tried your best to follow this law. I just want you to know, you literally by living this law out are still under a curse. Look what it says, verse 11. Cursed is everyone who does not continue to do everything written in the book of the law. He's like, there's no way, day after day after day after day after day after day after day, you can keep up with the standard of the law. You're cursed. You're always gonna fall short. You're never gonna be able to do this on the regular. Look what he says. Clearly, no one who relies on the law is justified before God. Keyword before. When that word is used, it literally means to be fully seen, transparent, and known by God. Because the righteous will live by faith. Again, he's just kind of separating this idea of law and promise. He's separating this idea of the law. You can never measure up. So when you actually are fully seen by God, you will fall short. And only the righteous will be lived by faith. Continues on. The law is not based on faith. On the contrary, it says, the person who does these things will live by them. So it's all about what you do. Did you keep Sabbath? Did you go to the temple and sacrifice an animal to atone for your sins? Did you do this? Did you do this? Did this? It's all on you. Continues on. Christ, though, redeemed us from the curse of the law. And get this. This is what scholars don't want to touch. By becoming a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone who is hung on a pole. Continues and says, he redeemed us in order that the blessing given to Abraham might come to the Gentiles through Christ Jesus, so that by faith we might receive the promise of the Spirit. Now, what's going on here? Paul does something so genius. He's talking about blessing and curses, and he says, hey, if you live by the law, and you buy into these preachers who are teaching you faith plus the law equals salvation, you gotta understand, you will never measure up. And when you stand before God, you will not stand as righteous. Because you know what the gospel is? The gospel is faith plus salvation. The fact that Christ actually said, no, here's the deal. I will cut myself off. I will become the curse. I will legally become the curse so that you receive the blessing. And in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, it says that Jesus became sin for us. Now, I'm not saying he was a sinner. He just took on all of our sin. Everything that we do that falls short of, he took it on himself. This is why, like, on the night he's betrayed, he goes to the Garden of Gethsemane, he prays, and he's sweating blood. Why? Because all of humanity's sin is falling on him. The weight of it all. And you gotta think about this. Every time that Jesus speaks of God, he calls him Father, except when he's on the cross. And he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you cut me out? Why have you let me be a curse? Why was I sin? And it was in this moment where he's taking it all on himself so that we can receive the blessing. That we can receive the actual gift to walk in the promise of God. Now, let me take this farther. Let me see who's here. There was a jersey. What jersey? Are you a Cowboys fan? Oh, you need Jesus. That's great. I'm glad you're here, bro. Glad you're here. Okay. What jersey do you have right now? Oh, okay. All right. So what's your name? Andrew, I'm Steve. Nice to meet you. Okay, so I got Andrew, the Cowboys fan. If you're watching online, we got a Cowboys fan sitting here. He's in church. Thanks be to God. Pray for him. Okay, so here's the deal. So Andrew and I, we've never met. I don't know you, okay? But let's say I'm talking in the middle of this message, and this happens from time to time. People will get up and they just walk out, go, I don't like the guy who wears the same clothes every week. Like, I don't like that guy. He needs a haircut. He looks like a poor man's Joel Osteen. Like, get him out of here, all right? You just walk out, okay? I get it, all right? So let's just say this. He's basically saying, I'm cut out. I don't want to be part of this, okay? Take that. Let's say Kevin, all right? He didn't come to second service. That's cool. All right, let's say Kevin, executive pastor, stepping in, interim leader. I've done ministry with him for like a year. He's as good as they come, salt of the earth. Love that guy. What if he's like, I don't like this guy. Cut out. Cursed. I don't want anything to do with him. I'm gone. Like, okay. That would sting a little bit more than Andrew, no offense, but it would sting a little bit more because I know him. What if my wife? Been married 17 years. She's like, hey, I don't like you. Cut out. That hurt way more than Kevin. My kids, cut out. That would hurt way more than Kevin and Andrew. Think about the closeness between God and the Son, Father and Son. When Paul says these words, that he willingly became the curse for us so that we could get the Father. I mean, this is like the feeling that he must have had. It's not like, God, my God, why have you forsaken me? It's like, why have you forsaken me? Why have you allowed me to feel this? And he's taking all of this so that we don't have to go through this like, am I good enough? Am I okay? Am I doing enough? Am I working hard enough? Am I just trying? That we could step in and live into the blessing. And the truth is, many of us just don't know how to do that. Which leads us to the second set of scriptures. It's all centered around the meaning of the law and the promise. And Paul wants you to get this. And I think this message is more important today than ever before. He says this, brothers and sisters, let me take an example from everyday life. Continues, he says, just as no one can set aside or add to a human covenant, there's that word, that has been duly established, so it is in this case. Continues, the promises were spoken to Abraham and to his seed. Now he's gonna build an entire theology on the word seed versus seeds. And Paul's literally says this, scripture does not say, and to seeds, meaning many people, but and to your seed, meaning one person who is Christ. And then Paul tries to make sense of it, which gets even a little bit crazier to understand. He goes, what I mean is this, the law, the Torah, introduced 430 years later, does not set aside the covenant previously established by God and thus do away with the promise. For if the inheritance depends on the law, then it no longer depends on the promise. But God in his grace gave it to Abraham through a promise. Why? Then was the law given at all. It was added because of transgressions until the seed, meaning Jesus, capital S, to whom the promise referred, had come. The law was given through angels and entrusted to a mediator. It's a kind of a hint towards Moses. A mediator, however, implies more than one party, but God is one. And then he says this, is the law therefore opposed to the promises of God? Absolutely not. For if a law had been given that could impart life, then righteousness would certainly have come by the law. Isn't that hard to understand? Anybody else? Okay, I'm still paying debt on my student loans for Bible college, and it's hard, okay? But here's what I need you to see. Law, Torah, 5 books of the Bible, 613 commandments. Promise. The law, oftentimes, and the promise are at odds. But here's what Paul wants you to understand. The law's not bad. Paul's a rabbi. Paul loved the law. He just knew that the law wasn't salvation. He doesn't say like, forget the law. No, the law's important. It's just not going to allow us to keep living this life based on the promises of God. So he begins to bring it back to Abraham and says, hey, remember in the scriptures when it talks about how there was gonna be this inheritance through the seed? And again, the Jewish people thought about it as land. And through that land, they would have a people, and that people would be like this blessing to the world. And Paul's like, yeah, that's true, but it says seed. And the seed is the land, but it points to one person, and it's through that person that's literally gonna fulfill the law. And the Torah was this picture of the way, the truth, and life. And this is how John introduces Christ. He's the way, he's the truth, he's the life. And all of a sudden, you begin to recognize the sense of the difference between law and promise. Now, let me take it farther. Because here's the problem. I like the law because I control the law. Meaning, if I like don't feel like I'm close to God, then it's easy for me to create a checklist to say, just do this, this, and this, and I feel good. And what Paul's trying to teach the church in Galatians is going, no. That's putting all the onus on you. And the gospel is about you actually learning to receive the fullness of the blessings and the promise of what Christ has done for you. And that, my friends, is hard. That, my friends, is hard. So my buddy Andrew over here, who we just met, and I said, hey, up behind this television are first-class tickets to Dallas to go to the next Cowboys game, 50-yard seats on me. The only thing that Andrew needs to do is believe me. And if he believes me, then he gets up and he walks up and he grabs the tickets, he grabs the flights, and he receives it. But if I look at Andrew, I go, okay, here's the deal. I've got these tickets to Dallas to see the Cowboys, next game, but here's what I need you to do. I need you to wash my car, and I need you to clean my house. I need you to do my laundry. I need you to do a whole bunch of stuff. That is law. Does this make sense? The law always puts all of the focus on us. The promise puts all of the focus on the promisor, on God. And all we have to do is step in and receive it. But too often in the church, we're like, no. I know what you did, God. I'm gonna do what I need to do. And I'm gonna prove my worth. I'm gonna prove my righteousness. I'm gonna prove my faithfulness. I'm going to prove myself. And friends, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And one of the most central passages in the text to describe this, Paul is using. And he takes us back to Genesis 15. And in Genesis 15 is the covenant. You saw that word covenant between God and Abraham. And basically God's like, hey, I'm gonna give you a son. I'm gonna give you a land. I'm gonna do this amazing promise through you. And look what Abram says. He says something that I think is so human, so honest, something I deeply, deeply resonate with. He says this, but Abram said, Sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain possession of it? This is what he's asking. I know you're talking about the promise that you want to give to me, but how can I know? Like Andrew's probably going, how can I know that there's tickets behind there? How can I know? How can I know that I can take you, God, at your word? How can I know that you are saying, I am loved? I am filled with grace. How can I know that you've gifted me? How can I know that you've got this situation? How can I know? And oftentimes that is so honest and so tense. So what do? We jump to law. Oh, I just do this. Because if I just do this enough, then God's gonna have to bless me. If I do this, then you have to do this. And God works for you. But the whole arc of the scriptures is, here's a promise. How do I know? And by faith, you stepping in to receive that promise. And most of the church doesn't know how to do that. We know how to do this. I'm just gonna read my Bible more. I'm just gonna do a 7-day YouVersion plan, which is awesome. I'm just gonna go serve. I'm just gonna hustle and try and strive and and call it the gospel. But it's just the law. And Paul would say, someone has tricked you. So this is what God says. After Abram says, how do I know? How can I know? Look what he says. So the Lord said to him, bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon. I love that. Then he says this, next slide. Abram brought all these things to him, cut them in two, and arranged the halves opposite each other, except for the birds, however. He did not cut them in half because they're too small. So this is what he does. Takes the heifer, cuts it in half. Takes the goat, cuts it in half. Takes the rams, cuts it in half. Cuts the pigeons, the birds, he puts them on the side. They set them up, half on one side, half on the other. And this was covenant language. And so there's this moment, like whenever a covenant would be happening, someone would pass through. And when you pass through, it was depicting that by you passing through, you were basically saying, I will keep my word. And if I don't keep my word, you can cut me in two. So this is what God says, hey, Abram, do this. And Abram's thinking, oh, God's gonna have me walk through and proclaim my allegiance to him. But look what happens. Something so beautiful happens. Then birds of prey came down on the carcasses, but Abram drove them away. And then, as the sun was setting, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a thick and dreadful darkness came over him. Continues on. And as this whole dread is coming over him, something begins to happen. It says, when the sun had set and darkness had fallen, a smoking fire pot with a blazing torch appeared and passed between the pieces, being symbolic of God. God walking this. God saying, no, it's not on you, Abram. It's on me. I'm the one who's given you this promise. I will walk through it. It is on me. I will keep my promise. I've got you. I've got your family. I've got this story. I've got the redemptive arc. I've got the plan. All you need to do is receive. And too many of us don't know how to do that. We're like, I'll walk through, God. I got it. It's on me. No. That's law. It's about the art of receiving. See, the necessity of the gospel is that we are blessed, not cursed. Jesus took all that curse on us legally so that when God looks at Jesus, it's as if he got what we deserve. And now when he looks at us, it's as if he sees Christ in us. And this is the blessing that we receive. Now it's like, are we gonna choose to accept that promise and walk into it, or just go to law? And this is, my friends, goes to the third point, the consequences of not understanding the gospel. It's because I think for many of us, it's hard for us. I know it's hard for me. I know when I don't receive the promise or the blessing, or I don't believe the promise or the blessing, because when I fail, I think I gotta do something to make up. Or when I fall short, I gotta do something. I can feel it in my bones. I can feel it in my body. The more that I'm realizing the gift of the gospel, what makes it such good news, it's literally something I can receive. But for so long, I just got into this game that I just call this up-down life. I'm striving, I'm climbing, I fail, I'm climbing, I'm striving, up and down. And this is what literally happened in the temple. I mean, you had people who, would sin. What would they do? They'd go and they'd grab a lamb that was 1 year old and perfect, and they'd bring it to the temple. They'd climb up and they'd literally put their sins on the lamb. They'd kill the lamb and they'd be leaving the temple. Then all of a sudden they'd see someone have a lustful thought, and they're like, oh my goodness. And they go to get another 1 year old lamb, bring it back to the temple, and they'd go sacrifice that, and then they're leaving. And then all of a sudden they're like, they see someone they can't stand, and they're like, I hate you. And they're like, I did it again, I sinned. Go, and they're back up to the temple, and they kill that temple. I'm so sorry, God, I did it again. And then they're going, and they just do something. They don't want to keep Sabbath. They want to watch football on Saturdays, and so they do, and they're like, I gotta go. And they don't want a perfect lamb, and so they see this three-legged blind lamb that they call Lucky, and they're like, I don't want to take something that costs money, I'm gonna take Lucky. And they just keep going, sacrifice, kill, up, down, up to the Temple Mount, down to the city, up to the Temple Mount, down to the home, up, down. And I think this is how many of us live our life. I'm just gonna read a little bit more. You know what, this is the year I go through the entire Bible. How many of you have done that and not followed through on that? 19 straight years for me. You know what I mean? This is the year, man. This is the year. I mean, there are these moments where oh man, this is it. I'm not saying prayer or Bible reading is bad. What I'm saying is trying to earn, trying to do something to prove your righteousness. Do it in response of God's goodness. Don't do it to try and prove, because then it makes the gospel not based on the blessing and the promise and what Jesus took on the cross for you. It makes it about you, not the promiser. Here's the gospel. And I hope we have a good insurance plan. I'm afraid of heights, to be honest. That's how much I love you all. My hands are so sweaty. Mom's spaghetti. You shouldn't get that joke. Up, down, up, down. Here's the deal. For so many years, I just thought, man, if I do this, if I fast here, if I show up to church and I serve here, if I do this, that's what's gonna give me the blessing and the promise of God. That's on me. The gospel is, I have fallen short. And the crazy piece about it is that the man who is seated at the right hand of the Father, the man who had all the power in the world, had all the glory in the world, Philippians, Paul writes, he empties himself out. He takes on flesh and bone. He becomes one of us, and instead of looking for people to serve him, he comes down to us. And he just starts engaging with us. Again, every day, for so many years, it was like, what did I do? What did I do for better and for worse to prove my existence? Thinking, if I just do enough good things, God will see me and pour out his blessing and his promise upon me. But friends, can I tell you, it's not about anything you do. It's about what was done for you. And what was done for you was God saw you walking a life of cursing, feeling cut off from a life of walking in righteousness and goodness with God. And God said, my son will come. Be willing to cut himself out, take it all on so that you can actually understand you have more blessing than you deserve, more promise than you will ever know. All you have to do is receive it. And the problem is, we don't like that. Because for many of us in our capitalistic society, we've achieved everything. I work for my salary. I work for my influence. I work to build my name. I work to do this, and it's not the gospel. The gospel is there's nothing that you could do that could get you to God. It might get you to the C-suite. It might get you to a certain amount of followers on TikTok or whatever you use. It might get you a certain bank account. It might get you a certain zip code. It might get you into a certain school, but it will never be enough to get you into heaven. Because you can't earn it. You can only receive it. And too many of us are just living through this life is like, what did I do? Some of you probably are sitting here going, yeah, see, but you don't understand, man. You don't understand what I've done. You don't understand the ways that I've cut myself out of relationship. You don't understand how I just, addictions, you don't understand how I've screwed up. You don't understand. There's no way. And I'll just say real quick, you're still making it about you. If you look at this, and if you think the yellow Louisville, is that how you say Louisville? Like you see that as being like perfection. A mentor of mine taught me this. And let's say Billy Graham, Captain Integrity, probably like the best living human in our last 100 years. He's probably here. I'm probably here. You're probably somewhere around here. But there's still a gap for Billy. There's still a gap. There's no difference between male or female, Jew or Greek, slave or freed person, because there's still a gap. And there's no amount of sermons that Billy could ever preach that could get himself up to heaven. And he tried. The only thing that could happen is for him to receive the blessing and the promise. But here's the problem. When you live this life of what did I do? Trying to build, you know what you're doing? You're putting Jesus back up on the cross. And the tomb is empty. Some of us, we just see the cross as like, oh, God forgave me. God, thanks for the forgiveness. And I screwed up again, put Jesus back up on the cross. I'm just gonna do these steps, man. I'm just gonna do this. I'm just gonna work. It doesn't work. And so you got a whole bunch of people in the church who are exhausted, tired, weary, burned out. And Jesus, even in Matthew 11, says, are you tired? Are you burned out on religion? Are you burned out on the law? Come be with me. Watch how I do this life. Learn from me. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. And it's in that where Jesus is just saying, let me be the curse for you so that you can be the blessing. Let me take this so that you can step into the promise that you're enough, the promise that God's got this, the promise that you're gonna be okay, the promise that God is with you, that God is for you, that God loves you. The promise that it's not on what you do that will earn your salvation, it's on what God has done for you. The question is, will you just say yes? Will you say yes? And there will be moments with your kids where you want to turn it into, I just got to do enough to prove. You'll never be able to do enough. In the workplace, man, I'm just gonna do enough. You'll never be able to do enough. When it comes to like faith, I'll just do this. I'll go to seminary, like I'll do this. I'll start volunteering. I'll burn myself out just to prove, and it's anti-gospel. It's bad news. The good news is that you just get to sit here and go, I don't deserve this. The addict in me doesn't deserve this. The bitterness in me doesn't deserve this. The selfishness in me doesn't deserve this. The person who cares too much about their reputation doesn't deserve this. The guy who's just messed up a lot doesn't deserve this. And yet Christ said, yeah, you might not deserve it, but I still came to serve you so that you would know that my Father keeps his promise. He goes first. And if you ever doubt it, look at the cross. Broken, poured open, so that at any moment you wondered, am I enough? Am I good enough? Am I worthy? Do I have what it takes? Can I ever live a life of blessing and promise? Look at the cross, and it's God's profound moment saying, yes, 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 yes. You just gotta trust me. It's not about what you do. It's about what's been done for you. The worship team is gonna come up and they're gonna sing. And they're gonna sing the song about the promise. And I think for some of us, we're probably living a little bit like, I hear you, Steve. But man, I don't know. I got a little bit of wall up because I've been taught to earn. I've been taught to achieve. I've taught to make things happen. I've been taught. You're telling me to live like this? It's crazy. It's foolishness. And that's why the gospel is foolish. That's why people don't actually live into it. But they're gonna sing the song about the promise. And then they're gonna show on the screen a portion of scripture from Galatians 3, which is what most people preach on. It's probably what I should have just preached on. But the truth is, you can't understand that unless you really understand the blessing and curse, the promise and law, and what Jesus truly has done for you. And when you read it, you're gonna go, oh, that's what it is. And the truth is, you can lean in and be a part of that. And so God, I just come before you. I am a recovering reacher and achiever. I am a recovering worker who tries to prove his worth. I am someone who wants to point to what I've done and what I do. And it's so easy for me to miss the gospel. So easy for me to miss what you did and make it about me, center me and not center you. And so God, I pray right now that whatever fog is in our mind, whatever resistance there is to the promises of God, whatever angst we have, whatever false humility, false pride that says, no, it's about what I achieve, what I do. Strip that away from us, God. Let us see, let us feel, let us know, let us have knowledge that the promise of the gospel is for every one of us. I pray that you'd work right now, Father. Work in a mighty and powerful way. Set some people free right now who feel cursed. That was Jesus, that's what he took. Who long to feel blessed. Just look at the cross. Who feel like they keep tiredly working. That's law. I just need to receive the promise. You are loved and he is with you and he is for you. Hear this right now.
To fall on the name of Jesus, I will call. For I know my God is in control, and his purpose is unshakable. It doesn't matter what I feel, it doesn't matter what I see. My hope will always be your promises to me. And now I'm casting out all fear, for your love has set me free. My hope will always be your promises to me. Go ahead and stand up with us. As I walk into the days to come, I will not forget what you have done. For you have supplied my every need, and your presence is enough for me. Doesn't matter what nothing's gonna stop the plans you make. Nothing's gonna take your love away. You will always be more than enough for me. You will always be more than enough for me. You will always be more Doesn't matter what I feel, it doesn't matter what I see. Your hope will always be your promises to me. Now I'm casting out all fear, feel love to set me free. My hope will always be your promises to me. It doesn't matter what I feel, it doesn't matter what I see. My hope will always be your promises to me. Now I'm casting out all fear, with your love to set me free. My hope will always be your promises to me. Oh, your promises. Oh, your promises to me. Your
It's a powerful word. And I hope you saw a passage of scripture. I just want to read that last verse. If you belong to Christ, you believe you belong, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. You have everything you need. You have grace upon grace. The question is, will you receive it today? Would you put out your hands? I'd love just to give you a blessing. I invite people to do this often just because I'm good at achieving and climbing and striving and reaching. But the gospel is just for receiving. And so my brothers and sisters of Mission Community Church, whether you're in this room, watching online, may you never forget what was done for you. May you never forget the cross and the gift that Jesus gave you. He was your curse, he was the sin, so that you would be the blessing and receive the promise. May this week, may it not be about what you do, but may it always, ever, only be about what he has done for you. And may we walk in that, respond in that, live in that, because it's through that promise we will be a gift to the world for his glory, for the gospel's sake. Much love, grace and peace. We'll see you next weekend.